and welcome to Return to Regalia, an Underland Chronicles reread podcast. I'm Una.
And I'm Lily.
And today we'll be covering chapters 9 and 10 of The Marks of Secret, in which Howard, Boots, Hazard, and some others crash Luxa and Gregor's covert mission to the Fount. Friends, it has been over a month since I last recorded anything, and it has been a wild summer. I have just been so busy with work and other creative projects. Thank you so much for bearing with me in these trying times. Soon I hope to be back on a regular schedule. But for now, where we left off, Meredith had just presented a basket of baby mice. Chapter 9 begins with Boots being delighted by the baby mouses. Hazard says they're hungry and squeaks at them while he feeds them bread. Vicus notes that the basket is human-made, and it's the same kind they give to the nibblers near the fount. Meredith and Vicus wonder why someone would have put the pups on the river like this, and Hazard says it was their mother. He communicates with the babies and learns that something bad was happening to the nibblers, but he can't tell exactly what. They take the mice to the old nursery, and Gregor notices that all the carved animals, except the evil turtle, have songs that go with them. While Dulcet, Boots, and Hazard take care of the mice, Luxa asks Gregor for his help. Gregor initially refuses to go with her to the Nibbler colony by the fount because he's still mad at her for what she said about him enjoying fighting the snakes in the previous chapter. Luxa points out that Gregor once did for Boots what the mother Nibbler did for her pups. In Book 3, he sent Boots away with Hazard and Aurora before the battle with the ants. This makes Gregor realize that something terrible must have been happening to the mice if the mom felt like she had no other choice than to put her children on the river. Do you remember, reading this for the first time? Did you have any ideas about, what had happened to the mice?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think I was too young to be making up predictions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I was just like, oh, that must be bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. If my mom sent me away in a basket down a terrifying river,
right,
something awful must be happening.
Yeah, I pretty much took Luxa and Gregor's assessment of the situation at face value.
Yeah.
Gregor finally gives in when Luxa says please, and the two get to scheming. Because they can't leave the palace through the nursery's secret passage anymore, they're going to pretend they're going on a picnic.
First date?
Yes! Oh my gosh, we'll get to that. I just wonder what other plans they thought of and discarded before they settled on picnic.
Yeah, I don't know, who would really believe that. They have so much tension all the time.
Yeah, but they've been hanging out.
Yeah.
Because Gregor's been coming to the Underland, every day during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe they've been on picnics before, so this isn't that weird, but, I think it is clever, though, because it lets them take a whole bunch of food with them if they say they're going on a picnic.
True.
I also love that Gregor gives in when Luxa just, asks nicely. He knows that the smart thing to do would be to not go on this potentially dangerous mission, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna get in so much trouble for this, but just Luxa asking nicely is enough to convince him.
Yeah, well, she doesn't normally ask nicely.
Exactly. Yes.
So it must be pretty important.
Right? That night, Gregor gathers his standard questing supplies from the museum, along with some cool binoculars that will come in handy later. The next morning, Gregor, Luxa, and the bats meet in the High Hall. Luxa explains their giant picnic hamper to Gregor by saying, I told the cook you eat like a shiner. And the narration reminds us about Photos Gloglo and Zap from Book 2.
How could we forget?
Yes, the stars of the series. Gregor says, thanks. So do you go around thinking of ways to insult me, or do they just come to you naturally? Which is great. I think the banter in this book between Gregor and Luxa is just peak Gregor and Luxa. They have some of the best interactions in this book.
Yeah, they're really growing in maturity as characters, in their relationship with each other.
Yeah, definitely. Before they can take off, Howard flies in on Nike, and what a coincidence! He also has a picnic hamper. Howard suggests they all picnic together, and Luxa starts to explain why he can't come with, then looks to Gregor for help, which triggers one of the funniest scenes in the entire series, in my opinion. Gregor says, "This is kind of like a date," and then has to explain, "You know, when you hang out with just one girl, not your friends."
Oh my god.
He knows it's a wild thing to make up, but because he and Luxa are both embarrassed by it enough for it to be true, he runs with it and makes Luxa play along. The narration says, "Like he knew anything about dates. Not only had Gregor never been on a date, but his mother would probably never even let him ask a girl out until he had finished high school. Once he had gone to a party at his friend Angelina's home, and he'd been too shy to ask anyone to dance. But here he was, the date guy."
The date guy. So cool.
Gregor, warrior, overlander, the date guy. Howard points out their comically huge picnic basket, and when Luxa tells him to mind his own business, he reveals that he and Nike know about the crown. Nike explains how the messenger bat Hermes mentioned delivering it, and she told Howard what it meant. Luxa literally stamps her foot on the ground and tries to forbid them from coming along. I love that just, like, as soon as they're figured out, Luxa is just like, she drops the act and stamps her foot on the ground and is like, "You can't come."
Yeah. Yeah, that lasted a long time. I feel like that was kind of a good excuse. Like, it's so believable.
Right. We'll get into that later when Howard brings it up again with Gregor in the next chapter. Or later this chapter. Gregor reasons that they might need Howard and Nike's help. Luxa says, "Stay out of this." And Gregor says, "I tried to, remember?" This is such a classic Gregor-Luxa interaction. It's great.
Yeah.
Howard threatens to tell Vicus about Luxa and Gregor's plan unless they let him and Nike in on it. As if on cue, Vicus enters and asks what they're doing. Howard, Gregor, and Luxa all say, "A picnic," at once. Vicus notes their large amount of food and asks how many they're expecting. As if on another cue, Hazard, Boots, Temp, and Talia arrive.
Oh boy.
Vicus tells them to mount up and puts Boots on Ares' back. She taps the back of Gregor's head with her princess scepter and sings, "Picnic, picnic." The narration says, the whole princess costume thing had been a mistake. Next time he'd get her a coloring book. The comedic timing of this scene is just exquisite to me. It's like watching a cartoon character fall down a flight of stairs. It's just like one beat after another. It gets like worse and worse for Gregor and Lux's plan. Like, it starts out looking so good. They got all this food. They're ready for their big journey. They're about to take off. Howard and Nike swoop in. And then their date subterfuge doesn't work. And then Vicus shows up. And then the kids show up. And it's all in this, like, kind of rapid, like, just, like, beat by beat. I think it's a really well timed scene in terms of, like, comedic timing.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to do that in a book, but I think she does it really well.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are some other really good moments where the comedic timing of the book really stands out. I'm thinking about in The Prophecy of Bane when Gregor and Ares are like in the labyrinth and there's like a 3-path fork in the tunnel and Ares is like, "Let's do the right," and they like circle back around and he's like, "Maybe the left," and then they reach a dead end and they come back and he's like, "Maybe you should choose." That's just like one of my faves. The group flies out over some fields of grain and the narration mentions the Underland farmers using long curved blades to harvest them. Later we'll learn that these are scythes and they have symbolic relevance. Luxa starts fighting with everyone about how they ruined her scheme, but she refuses to turn back. The flight takes at least 12 hours, which is wild. Like, I never paid attention to Underland geography when I was younger, but now I'm, like, super fascinated. Just how far apart are things? How long does it take to get places? And I always thought that the Fount was, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours away, but it's like a whole day's trip of like flying nonstop. And I actually did some math to try and figure out how far north the Fount is from Regalia.
That's great.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
So I had to make some assumptions first. So later in this book, Rip Red runs at full speed to keep up with the bats as they fly. So I decided to look up how fast bears can run because they're the closest animal to Rip Red in size and build that I could think of.
Mm-hmm.
Any guesses on how fast bears can run?
45 miles per hour.
30 miles per hour.
Oh.
Good guess. So let's say that Rip Red's maximum running speed and the bat's average flying speed is about 30 miles per hour. 30 miles an hour times 12 hours is 360 miles. Do you know what is approximately 360 miles north of New York City?
Is it the ocean?
No, it's Quebec, Canada.
Oh, yeah.
So Gregor and the squad could literally be in Canada right now.
Oh my god.
The Fount could be in Canada.
That's so cool.
Something I never considered is that the Underland goes under, like, all these different parts of the world. Like,
yeah.
this whole time I was just imagining it under New York, but, like, obviously it's bigger than New York City.
Yeah, well, I bet, what if there were, like, different Underlands, like, in different continents?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good thought, actually. You know, I feel like I've read fan fiction, or maybe I just, like, thought about this when I was a kid, that if, like, there was a sequel to this, if there was another book in the series, it would be, like, Gregor in Virginia after his family moves away, and, like, he finds another entrance to the Underland in Virginia. But I always thought, like, oh, that wouldn't work. Virginia's too far away. But, like, actually, there could be an Underland there, and feasibly you could get to New York City. Like, it wouldn't take that long, especially if they're making a 12-hour flight just to the Fount.
Yeah, clearly I don't know my East Coast geography very well, but I feel like it's pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe the fanfics are true.
Yeah, wow. I was curious, like, how fast the bats could fly.
Yeah.
So that's a good guess.
Yeah, I just kind of was like, well, Rip Red is like a bear. Bears can run pretty fast, 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to, like, know how fast, like, normal bats can fly.
I actually looked that up, and it depends on the species, and I think that on the high end it can be like 100 miles an hour or something, or they can dive at that speed.
Oh my gosh. What about normal rats?
How fast can rats run?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one. Let's look it up. Well, okay, but they're, like, tiny. If they were blown up to... Okay, rats can run up to 7 miles per hour. But that's because they're so tiny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we blew them up to bear size,
yeah,
would they be as fast as bears?
I think they'd be faster.
I think that Rip Red is described as being, like, 6 feet tall and hundreds of pounds and, like, very muscly.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a better animal we could compare Rip Red to. Because originally I looked up, like, how fast can a horse run, and that's faster.
Yeah.
But horses are, like, made for running.
Yeah.
And rats are made for, like, scurrying.
That's true.
Not really, like, endurance running.
No, that's true.
So, who's to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was just, like, a fun thing that I found out. I was just like, how far away is the Fount? Apparently a long way.
Yeah. And poor Vicus, like, the last thing he says to them is, be back in time for supper.
Oh my god, yes.
They're just like, see ya.
Yup, see ya, we will
like,
not be back.
I wonder if, like, they're even ever surprised anymore.
I think later they talk about, like, oh, what must Vicus and the others be thinking back in Regalia? I bet he thinks that they just, like, did go on a picnic and then something maybe happened to them, like they got lost or something. Like, I don't know if he would jump to, they were lying to me and they're off on a quest.
Yeah.
Anyway, as they're flying, Talia gets tired and they have to rearrange everyone so Ares can carry her. And Gregor ends up flying with Howard, who brings up the date thing. He basically tells Gregor he can't go around saying he and Luxa are going on dates because they're too young, and besides that, an Underland queen could never be with an Overlander. Gregor tries to say it was never actually a date, but Howard points out, you expected me to believe your lie. Ask yourself why you thought it was a plausible one. So this is kind of like what we're talking about. The narration says, Gregor guessed he had expected Howard to at least entertain the possibility that he and Luxa might like each other, and worse still, there had been that moment when Howard looked like he was buying it. So it's like, yeah, Gregor, you did kind of expect Howard to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that mean?
I like the part when he says, like, the process of finding a spouse in the Underland is a long and delicate one. And then the narrator says, a spouse? This is getting entirely out of hand.
I like that part too.
Yeah. He's like, I can't even date anyone until I'm out of high school. Like, what's happening? Why is he suggesting this?
It's so funny. I want to know what the long and delicate process of finding a spouse is. I want to learn about Underland courtship.
Probably, like, arrange dates.
Yeah, I imagine.
Have you seen Bridgerton?
I was just about to ask you that. Yeah, it's like the guy shows up and has to sit in the sitting room with the woman, and her mom has to be there, but sitting off to the side to supervise, and they can't go anywhere alone. Yeah, I think that's probably what's going on in Regalia. Gregor just says, got it, so they can drop the subject.
He knew kids his age who sort of dated, went to movies for pizza, which was kind of like a picnic, except inside.
I love that part too. Yeah, the narration is just so funny when Gregor is feeling embarrassed and awkward. The narration really takes on that character, and yeah, you can feel it.
Definitely embodies how middle school and young high school kids feel about dating. I feel at least that's how I felt.
Yeah,
I was why do people want to do this?
Literally,
it's literally just hanging out, except also awkward.
Yes, it's awkward. So you weren't going on dates when you were 12 years old?
I was not. No,
me neither. Definitely not.
Yeah.
They get to the Nibblers' colony but find it empty, just like in the jungle. Howard explains that his father, who runs the Fount, lets the Nibblers stay here because he's sympathetic to their plight. Apparently, the Nibblers ended up in colonies scattered around the Underland after being driven out of their homes by all kinds of creatures, especially the Gnars. Howard figures they wouldn't have left here unless they were driven out again by force. In the Nibblers' caves, they find half-finished meals and games, as if the former occupants just vanished into thin air. Then Hazard finds something that makes him cry out. He points out a mark on the cave wall, and Gregor recognizes it as the same one he and Ares found under Sevian's dead body. Hazard fearfully explains that it's one of the marks of secret, which Howard says is an old collection of symbols used for secret communications. I'm actually kind of bummed that we never learn more about the marks of secret. It's kind of just this one symbol that we learn about, the scythe, and it's not brought up again.
I know.
Yeah, it's let's run with that. What does it mean? What are the other symbols? How was it invented? Who used it? I have so many questions.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. I feel if I was an author of a book series with such deep lore, I wouldn't just come up with something as surface level as this. I would come up with the whole thing. I don't know, you're an author, so maybe you have insight into this.
Yeah, I would never be able to come up with the concept of a collection of symbols used for secret communications and not come up with a bunch of symbols.
Yeah, or how they came to be or why they stopped. Yeah.
And Suzanne Collins she's talked about having a whole Hunger Games Bible of everything that has happened in the universe of the Hunger Games. I assume that she has at least something similar for the Underland Chronicles. I bet she knows what the marks of secret are all about, and she is just holding out on us.
Yeah.
Luxa says no one's used the marks in centuries, but Hazard says they're still used in the jungle, and he recognizes the one on the wall as the scythe. The chapter ends with Hazard saying, "It means death. It means we who see it will die." And that is the end of part 1, The Crown. Thoughts about this chapter?
What a way to end it.
Yeah.
I also wonder, I can't remember if it's ever talked about in the books, but it'd be interesting to learn if the different creatures down there have ideas of what happens after death, because in a lot of cultures there's the Grim Reaper, and I feel a lot of us can recognize that symbol of the scythe as the symbol of Grim Reaper or agriculture or whatever, but it'd be interesting to because clearly, like, they didn't really know that necessarily. Like, it's been kind of forgotten, or they just don't believe it anymore.
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of interesting to, like, learn what they think of as, like, symbols of death. And, like,
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah. Because, like, even, like, the symbol of, like, a skull and crossbones is very human-centric. So, like, what are the other symbols? Like, a scythe is also human-centric, because, like, you have to be a human to wield one.
Yeah.
You're so right. Like, what are the other species? Like, what do they have in terms of mythology? I would give anything to know these things.
I know. But I mean, it seems like the Underlander, even the human Underlanders, like, have forgotten or don't have that as part of their culture anymore.
Yeah, they never really talk about, like, an afterlife. I think at one point we were talking about this, like, they don't have a religion other than Sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
They never talk about God. They don't even, like, swear to God or mention it at all. And, like, they never talk about the afterlife other than, like, when Luxa says someone who dies lives in your heart now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, as far as we know, like, they don't have any of that. But it feels impossible that they wouldn't have brought elements of religion from the overland when they came down.
Mm-hmm.
Unless Sandwich was just, like, a total cult leader that outlawed all other belief systems.
Yeah.
Which I could believe.
I mean, I think the fact that, like, Hazard has to explain it also might just be, like, a way for the author to communicate it to kids.
True.
Like, it doesn't have to mean that, like, the other Underlanders, humans, like, didn't know what it meant.
Right. Yes.
Because they do talk about it a little bit, about how, like, this symbol was brought, like you kind of said. Like, it was brought from the overland.
Right. Yeah, I think Howard... Oh, yeah, it's actually in this next part.
Mm-hmm.
Howard talks about it. Because everyone's trying to reassure Hazard that they're not going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And Gregor asks what a scythe is, and Howard explains it's a tool used for harvesting grain, but it represents death because it cuts down life, and that's why the Grim Reaper has one. So yeah, he talks about, like, scrolls from the overland depict the Grim Reaper with a scythe.
This is random, but when you were a kid, did you read the YA series? Like, I don't know what the series is called, but the first book is Scythe.
Yes, I read it in high school and in college. Yeah.
It's a good series.
By Neal Shusterman.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Neal Shusterman.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of the Unwind series. If you've read... Okay, we have to talk about that. It's like another kind of, like, dystopia thing.
Oh, cool.
It's not as, like, futuristic as Scythe is, but I never finished the Scythe series, and I never finished the Unwind series.
I never finished the Scythe series.
I'm gonna get back to it if it's the last thing I do, because those books were really good.
They were really good. I remember they kind of, like, blew my mind.
Same. I think I read the first book at least, like, 2 or 3 times. Like, it's really good.
Yeah.
I think about it a lot. Yeah, I gotta get back to them.
There was another Grim Reaper book, another YA Grim Reaper book that I read because, like, my crush in high school was reading it.
Nice.
And it was really bad. It was like a knockoff version of Scythe, I feel like.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like a micro genre, I feel like, for a second.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, Scythe by Neal Shusterman, I think the series is called The Arc of the Scythe or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's set in the very far future when humans have figured out science enough so that they don't die. You can just, like, reset your age to whatever you want and live forever. But to keep the population down, certain people get kind of, like, recruited and trained to be what they call scythes, which are basically just people who get to go around and kill people and, like, decide who gets to die and how, and hilarity ensues.
I just looked up Grim Reaper YA book, and the one that I was talking about was called Croak, which I wouldn't really recommend.
I feel like I might have seen the cover of that in my high school library.
Yeah, but I guess I wasn't kidding when I said it's a microgenre. There are actually, like, loads of Grim Reaper books. Like, you know, people being Grim Reapers, like, romance with Grim Reapers, people being trained how to be Grim Reapers. So
yeah.
If you're interested...
Yeah, it's kind of, like, adjacent to, like, a vampire in a way.
Yeah.
Just, like, associated with death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I should look into that.
They're dark and mysterious.
Yes.
What more could you want?
Yeah.
Keep you on your toes.
Exactly. Yeah, that sounds like some shit I'd be into. I mean, I really liked Scythe in high school and college.
Well, you might like Croak. I remember it was a romance.
We'll see. I trust your judgment that it was bad.
Yeah, the end was bad, so it's probably not worth it.
But I have been reading mediocre YA series lately.
Yeah.
So
it gives you a vibe.
Maybe I'll just add that to my list. Hazard reveals that he saw the mark once in the jungle when his mother died from venomous insects. The group discusses the nibblers and they decide the species most likely to have driven the mice out of their homes is the rats. The questers eat dinner and go to sleep, but Gregor stays awake on guard duty with Temp. Temp confirms that the rats hate the mice, but he thinks it's too late to help them, and Gregor's afraid he's right. I love whenever Temp chimes in and offers his opinion, even if it's kind of like, well, we knew that already. But
I feel like people don't ask him very often.
Yeah. Isn't there's like a part in the narration that says like, you could forget Temp was there most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time it was easy to forget
that
he was there.
I never forget you, Temp. You're always with me. In the morning, the group discusses going back to Regalia, but they all agree there isn't enough solid proof to convince the council to do anything helpful. Besides that, they'll all be in trouble when they get back, and probably restricted to their quarters. Gregor thinks his mom will probably send him and Boots back to the Overland, maybe forever, because they're only waiting for Grace to be well enough to travel to Virginia. Luxa starts to say that can't be right because of a prophecy, but she cuts herself off before she says more. Gregor pretends he doesn't hear Luxa because of Nerissa's warning that the prophecy of time might be damaging to him, but he plans to confront Vicus about it when they get back. Which he does. That's like the beginning of the 5th book, is him getting back to Regalia and reading the prophecy. It just doesn't happen for a long time. You have to go on a whole journey first. Howard thinks the only place the Nibblers could have gone where the Founce scouts wouldn't notice them is a place called the Swag. My brother and I thought this was endlessly hilarious when we read it as kids.
That's really cute.
I want to know, like, what's the etymology of swag? Maybe I should just look it up right now.
Swag has another meaning.
Well, okay, swag, the slang term is like swagger.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like a noun, I think.
Charisma.
Like a thing.
Swag. This says probably of Scandinavian origin. The original sense of the verb was cause to sway or sag. I'm not sure that there is another one.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking of something else. Oh, isn't a swag light? Isn't that a thing?
I've never heard that. Let me look it up.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, that is a thing.
But I don't know why that's called that.
Yeah. I want to know why this tunnel in the Underland is called the Swag, though. Where did that come from?
Maybe it was a passageway for people that were stealing things, because swag can mean stolen goods.
Ooh, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. Oh, yeah. Swag was also English criminal slang for thieves' plunder. That was not... I mean, it depends on how precise Suzanne Collins was with linguistics, but that supposedly didn't come around until the 1700s, which would have been after the Regalians went down there. So, who's to say? If you know the reason that this tunnel is called the Swag, just let us know. Drop it in the comments. So, apparently, it's this tunnel that goes under the river, and because they're all going to be in trouble anyway, they think they might as well try it.
Do the swag, don't do the swag. I like that quote.
Yeah, I love that one too. They go on foot over a gravelly floor looking for clues, and the place reminds Gregor of the subway that goes beneath the East River. Just as they reach the far end of the tunnel, Gregor finds a nibbler paw print on the wall. It's made of nibbler blood that's a few days old, and they figure it's a quick alternative to scratching out a scythe. The narration says, "It all added up to something evil." That was a funny word. A word for comic books and action-adventure cartoons. Not a word Gregor ever even used in its real sense, but here in the tunnel it felt real, which is a pretty raw line.
Yeah. I feel like he's seen evil before.
Yeah?
Just like little, I don't know, he's seen horrific things.
Yes.
Maybe, I guess not.
I feel like this line here is referencing a more like evil on a grand scale, which is what is happening to the mice.
Yeah.
And I think that Gregor has seen horrible things so far, but that wasn't like evil on another scale.
Yeah.
The way that this is.
I guess like a lot of things that he's seen have been like for a reason almost, or like survival, like even if like someone dies, like it's because something else was trying to live. But this is like senseless.
Yes.
And like foreboding and
yes.
premeditated.
Absolutely. I'm thinking even like Henry betraying them in book 1 is like, oh yeah, Henry's like bad, but I wouldn't go so far as to say evil. But yeah, what's happening with the rats and mice is like beyond. And I think that that's what these lines are getting at. Luxa puts her hand over the paw print, but before Gregor can figure out what to do next, a tremor starts to shake the ground. Howard tells everyone to mount up because there's about to be an earthquake. And that's the end of the chapter. Yeah, about to, get into the bulk of the quest. Very exciting.
Yeah, these were packed chapters.
Loved the Gregor and Luxa interactions this chapter. Just like this book complicates their relationship so much and like puts so many different stressors on it. It really like tests their friendship and their loyalty to each other. But I think Howard is like the star of these chapters. He's just like hilarious trying to be the older brother figure for Luxa and kind of just like telling Gregor like, because she has no older brother, I am stepping up to become, I feel I need to speak on her behalf or whatever. He's really funny. And I love that we're seeing Howard and Nike be best buds because they're like a pair, the two of them.
Yeah, I think the whole group is really cute together. Like, they all work really well together, I feel like, and just the little interactions between all of them, I think, is really awesome.
Yeah, agree. I love that Howard, Luxa, and Hazard are all cousins, and Gregor and Boots are brother and sister, so it's like, it's just like one big family, like, on this, like, trip together. And the Bats and Temp are also a part of that. Temp is such a real one. He really just manages to be on every quest and, like, not be noticed for most of it, but he's always there, just, like, helping out, looking after the kiddos.
Yeah, it's so cute.
Yeah. But I'm really looking forward to what comes next. Thank you so much for joining me, Lily.
Of course.
The next episode will cover chapters 11 and 12. Hopefully it will be less than a month before the next one comes out, but no promises, honestly. You can find our t-shirts, stickers, and more at redbubble.com/people/return-to-regalia, including our newest design, I'm not the step rat, I'm the rat that stepped up.
Wait. I need to look at this.
It's based on something that Nate said a couple episodes ago.
I believe it. I mean, as soon as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, that's something Nate said.
That's a Nathan quote.
Yeah.
Yup, exactly.
I found it. Oh.
I actually ordered a mug that says, I'm not the step rat, because I really want it. So yeah, check out the merch. Find us on Instagram, Tumblr, and YouTube at Return to Regalia, all one word. You can find all of our links at returntoregalia.card.co. Thanks for listening, and until next time, fly you high.